Top of the day to the enthusiasts. I am Sky Guy R12 Turn, and this is my first ever coaster review. But before we get into it, I'd like to note that I took quite a break since my last upload. Things got a little complicated. But don't worry, after 2 lazy weeks, here I am back on YouTube. I will try to post new videos weekly, and maybe even less than that. Now with all that said, let's get into the video. Daredevil Dive is a Gerstlauer Eurofighter located at Six Flags Over Georgia in Austell, Georgia, United States. It reaches a top height of 95 feet, speed of 52 miles per hour, length of 2,099 feet, and like a typical Gerstlauer, has a maximum angle of descent at 97 degrees. It has 3 inversions that I'll talk about later, but I'll get into how this coaster came to be at first. On April 16, 2005, Six Flags opened their first Gerstlauer at New England, Mr. Six's Pandemonium, now known as Pandemonium, which turned out to be a success. And then, Six Flags decided to make it a clone and ship it to 4 more parks, those being Six Flags St. Louis, Over Texas, Fiesta Texas, and Discovery Kingdom, the true latter being the latest one. But then, in 2012, Six Flags Discovery Kingdom closed it for good and relocated it to Six Flags Mexico and reopened there on March 6, 2013 as Joker. Before that happened, it was the year 2010 when Gerstlauer was getting started with adding their Eurofighters in America. The only 2 they've made at the time were Mystery Mine at Dollywood in 2007 and SpongeBob SquarePants Rock Bottom Plunge at Mall of America's Nickelodeon Universe in 2008. Six Flags had plans for something totally different. So then, they called Gerstlauer again for a project that wouldn't be similar to their Pandemoniums. Instead, that year, Six Flags teased Daredevil Dive, the Southeast's tallest beyond vertical dive coaster. And that turned out to be America's 3rd Gerstlauer Eurofighter. However, there was a feature in the animation that didn't transport smoothly into life, and that was that break right before the drop. According to the trailer, it said, "Pause while hanging over the edge." Well, we can see that train stop before it plummets down the drop. How did this not come into fruition? I'm not sure, to be honest. But, if this was there, I think enthusiasts would call this a dive coaster. You hear that, B&M? Finally, this coaster opened on May 28th, 2011. Now, in the park, it's located behind the DC area next to Goliath, and if it wasn't obvious enough, I absolutely guarantee you should ride this right after you enter the park. This coaster has horrible capacity. Single car trains with 3 rows that can hold 2 seats per row at a total of 6 riders per train. A typical Gerstlauer Eurofighter carries 8 riders per train divided in 2 rows, but 4 riders per row. But Daredevil Dive is even less. Even worse, they put VR goggles for this ride during the 2016 season, but thankfully, they were nowhere to be seen when I was there. This was Gerstlauer's first Eurofighter to feature lap bars, and although I appreciate the difference between that and that, I didn't have the best luck with these restraints. The operators pushed them down to the point where they were tight on my thighs, and my one and only ride on this coaster was in the middle row, so you could say I didn't get the best ride. After that, the ride starts its cycle with a right turn to the vertical lift. Then, after at least 10 seconds, you ascend up to its maximum height. Next, you plummet down the 97-degree drop, where you'll go through 2 rings with the cutouts of a fire. I didn't get a pop of airtime down this drop, but on the other hand, I did feel how steep it is and a little bit of weightlessness. I also love the theming on this coaster too, which I'll talk about later in the review. Next up is the ride's first inversion, a dive loop. I didn't get any hang time here, and I wouldn't call it a dive loop because just look at how it's profiled. You don't really bank 180 degrees here, and I feel like you bank the opposite direction just for a split second. Like, listen, I don't get it. It's not like B&M or Aero dive loops. It's more like something Gerstlauer or S&S would make. But let's not get too in-depth about this inversion. Next up is one element that does nothing in general. You ascend far above the ground while banking less than 90 degrees while turning right, and you just don't get any airtime, hang time, or laterals. They're just rapid transitions that fail to deliver strong Gs. You then go through the ride's second inversion, an Immelman. And this one's a little bizarre too. Not as much as the dive loop, but hear me out. Like the dive loop, you don't bank exactly 180 degrees here, but the Immelman looks more like how a normal Immelman looks like than the dive loop. I really found the dive loop to be so different from the others, yet it can be called a dive loop? What the heck? After the Immelman, you dive down and turn left, where you'll encounter the mid-course brake run. It's not that bad. On one hand, you want it for a certain element coming up, but on the other hand, your view in front is blocked by the trees, and like almost every mid-course brake run in the world, you slow down. After that, you drop down to the left, coming close with... I sadly don't know what this is. I'm not an expert at things related to daredevils or skydiving, but if you can please comment down what those buildings and cutouts are on the coaster, thank you very much. But this next element could be as pointless as that high to the ground bank turn to the right. It's a drawn out slope bank to the right. I guess its purpose is to feel like you're a daredevil gliding horizontally for a moment, but I don't know. Then, you turn right and go through a tunnel, leading to the final inversion of the ride, and my favorite I might add, the Heartline roll. This was the only moment where I was out of my seat. You sure get that hang time people talk about here, but you're not quite done yet. Finally, you take a right turn while taking a little dip while passing through these, yet again, I don't know what they are. And as you finish the right turn, you go back up, transit your bank, and now you made it to the final brake run. That concludes your ride on Daredevil Dive. Before I give my final score, I want to go through a couple more sensations about this coaster. First off, the name. I like it. 3 words that show alliteration and work together isn't something most coaster names can do. But Daredevil Dive also goes really well with its theme too. This coaster is themed to daredevils. Those are people who perform airborne tricks while skydiving. And coming from a Six Flags park, it's not the average theming on a coaster besides their DC ones. Daredevil Dive Station is described as a school, which is where daredevils learn to dive, and its trains have the shape to make it look like a rocket. But that's just the beginning. You have this, and this. Great work, Six Flags. Third off, the color scheme. Daredevil Dive has red track with yellow supports, which I think goes well enough with daredevils. And the trains they color don't hurt either. One is black, one is white, and one is blue. And finally, the setting. Daredevil Dive doesn't have a special setting. It's surrounded by trees behind the big DC area, and it's not one of those coasters you see far away from the park. And now, with all that out of the way, it's time for me to give my first Gerstlauer an overall score, and that's going to be a 6 out of 10. The restraints weren't as good as I thought it would be, but the theming keeps it from getting a lower score. I didn't ride this coaster the best way possible, so one day when I get back to this park, don't worry, I'll give it a re-ride. So those are my thoughts on Daredevil Dive at Six Flags Over Georgia. Have you ridden this coaster? Does your home park have this coaster? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you click that like and subscribe button. This channel does have an ultimate goal after all, and that's to become the next El Toro Ryan of the coaster community. Don't forget to check out my Roblox account, where you can friend/follow me and have the rare chance of playing a Roblox game with me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.